So we'll put in some dummy users, and you can use whatever usernames that you'd like or whatever names you'd like, as long as you remember to create one user that you'll want to use when you log in under an Active Directory account. So in headquarters, I'm going to create one user, new user, give him a name, and create a username or a user logon name. It's best to always have a naming convention for both computers, users, and as we've created, OUs and groups. I like to use first initial, last name, but you can use whatever you want. We'll set a password for our user. And since we have the user must change password at next logon, when this user first logs on with the password that you've set, they'll be prompted to create a new one. Now our John Jones user that we've created is a member of the administrative department, so we need to add him to that group. We'll right-click, select Add to Group, and the Select Groups window will open. Whenever we see this window, all we're doing is we're selecting the name of the object that we want to add to. We selected John Jones, and we clicked Add to Group. So right now we're looking for groups within the test.local domain that we want to add John Jones or whichever users we've selected to. So we're going to enter administrative and we're going to click Check Names. Looks like it found the group because it underlined it, and we'll click OK. The Add to Group operation is completed, and if we open our administrative group by right-clicking and hitting Properties, we can go to Members to see that John Jones has been added. The purpose of groups, of course, is to give permissions to a group of users without having to go into each individual user and modifying their permissions. If I gave the administrative group access to a resource, John Jones gets access because he is a member of administrative. Now let's practice adding one more user to a group, but this time let's do it at one of the sales locations. So remember, we're putting our users in the root OU of the location. We'll right-click, go to New, and then select New User. We'll give the user a name, and following our naming convention, we'll give him a username. We'll set a password, and click Next. Now we'll add Mike Jones to the Mechanics group of CM East. So we'll right-click Mike Jones, Add to Group, and this time we'll just search Mechanics. Click Check Names, and you'll see that there are multiple matches, because remember, we have a Mechanics group at CM East and CM West. Well, Mike is a mechanic at CM East, so we'll select the CM East Mechanics group. We'll select OK, the operation completed, and we can go into Mechanics to check to make sure that he is properly added. There's another way to add users to a group, and that's by going through the group itself. Let's say Mike Jones is also a member of the sales department. So we'll right-click the sales department, click Properties, click Members, and then click Add. This window looks familiar. Instead of searching for groups, we're searching for users in the test.local domain. Which user do we want to add? We want to add Mike Jones. Now we can search by his name or his username. I know his name, so we'll type in Mike, check names, and it looks like it found our Mike Jones. We'll click OK, and then we'll click Apply. That's the other way of adding a user to a group. Next, we'll go over moving, disabling, and deleting Active Directory users and other objects. So let's work with our Mike Jones user. Let's say that Mike Jones got moved to headquarters because he got promoted. We're going to move him by right-clicking his user account, clicking Move, and then selecting the container that we want to move him to. We're going to move him to the headquarters OU. So you'll see that Mike's account is gone from the CM East OU and has been moved to the headquarters OU. Now when we move user accounts or groups, they still retain their group membership. So if we go into Mike Jones's account, even though we've moved him to a new OU, he is still a member of Mechanics and Sales at CM East. So we need to remove him from these groups now that he is at the headquarters OU. We're going to select CM East, and we can hold down the Shift or Control key to select the two groups. We can select Remove and click Yes to remove him from those groups. With user accounts, we also have the ability to disable them. This has multiple uses in the real world, but for example, let's say Mike goes on an extended vacation. We need to disable his account for security reasons while he's away. We can right-click his account, then click Disable, and it will confirm that we've disabled the account. On the left-hand side, we can see that his account has a downward-facing arrow indicating that his account has been disabled. When an account is disabled, that user will not be able to access any resources, and if they're connected to the domain network, they will not be able to log in. We can enable Mike's account by right-clicking, then clicking Enable where the Disable button used to be. When you need to delete a user or a group or any other Active Directory object, you can simply right-click the object, then click Delete. It will confirm your selection, and the object will be deleted. Lastly, we'll go over several more options we have with modifying users and several of the actions that we can take with their accounts. If we look at our John Jones user, we can right-click and we get several options we haven't gone over yet. For instance, we can copy, which copies John Jones's account and all of its settings into a new account, allowing you to rename that new account and model a new user after John Jones. We can reset John's password, enabling him to change it again after he logs on the next time. If we go into the Properties page of a user, we have several tabs where we can edit the user's information, like address, account settings, profile options, as well as a variety of other settings. The most commonly used tab in the User Account Properties page is the Account tab. Here we can change the user's username or user logon name. We can unlock or lock the account, and we can make some changes to the account options. We can also set an expiration on the user account if it's a temporary account. Here we can also set logon hours when the user is permitted to log on. In the next lecture, we'll be going over DNS. I hope to see you there. In this lecture,